I don't think you locked my gas tank.
I don't, yeah, because it drives me nuts, so I just leave it unlocked. I'm like, nobody's going to do anything to our gas tank.
But I like to spin it.
Oh, okay. And we're off.
Oh, watch out, that
Yeah,
Tesla's
he's doing some dumb shit. I was about to say it, but then you said it right when I was opening my mouth. People always struggling in this little traffic circle.
I know. Oh,
You can stay in this and just kind of follow that bus. I do it all the time. You lost your car though?
it has low battery, it said.
Oh, well that's what happened. It probably went into some power saver mode. It's dead? So I brought Jess out today and I hooked up an audio rig to where I could get the Cardo's audio from her helmet to my helmet through the recorder. And then she forgot to charge her Cardo. So we're out here for a ride. I was gonna get her her 1 year impressions on the Street Twin, because we've owned this bike now for 1 year and 3 months. And we've really had a lot of time with the bike. Thought it would be a good time to kind of talk about it, because she mentioned something the other day when we were riding. She was like, I'm so obsessed with my bike. And I was like, you know what, I'm kind of obsessed with your bike too. I have the Scrambler 1200, it's an amazing bike, but when I ride her bike, I'm like, there's just something really nice about this motorcycle. It hits so many boxes, you know, it's just like that perfect medium size. It's still on the bigger side at 900 cc's, but like, the way that it rides, to me, it still feels very medium. It's 475 pounds. It's got about 60 horsepower. It's like just a really nice medium. So I wanted to get Jess's impressions, because like obviously I know what she said, but I thought it would be good for the viewers to see her perspective on the bike, because one, she's a newer rider. She's been riding less than 2 years. Two, this was her first big bike. She came off of a 125 and this was her second bike that she purchased. And three, it's her bike. She rode it. She rides it all the time. I mean, I ride it a lot too, but like, she's the one who really like has put the miles on this thing. But spoiler alert, the Street Twin, now known as the Speed Twin 900, is a really well-balanced motorcycle. It's not overly top-heavy. It's fairly low-slung. It holds most of its weight low compared to my Scrambler, which does not at all. It holds a lot of its weight high. The one thing I think is so much better about her bike than mine is because it's low-slung, it really takes corners great. It has the foot position is almost sporty. It's like as sporty as a standard could get before it becomes a sport bike. And you can tell when you're taking a corner. You can really tell that like when you lean, you feel like you're in that nice, almost crouched position that really lets you feel comfortable. Similar to like, you know, right now I'm on the CB. I feel very comfortable when I take corners on this bike because of that foot position and, you know, being a little bit more crouched forward with my arms. That's one thing I think the Street Twin really excels at. It's very much a bike you could take into the twisties. And it's got plenty of power for it too. Like sure, it's not 120 horsepower, it's 60, but it's all torque. It's 60 horsepower, 60 torque. It's not a racetrack bike, but we're not on the racetrack. We're going 40 miles per hour down Kelly Drive and having a great time doing it. You know, she's kind of ripping open in second, third, fourth gear. She's enjoying herself, and that's kind of what it's about. That's how I think about it, you know? That's why I loved the Monkey so much, because everywhere I went on the Monkey, full throttle, you know, and there was never any consequences. I could just open it up and I would never get in trouble. You know, it's truly a Bonneville 900 or a T100. And I think there's just something about that bike. That's the OG Bonneville. You know, that's the one that all of the other platforms are built off of. And I have a feeling that none of the other platforms are quite as good as that one. Just a feeling, because like my Scrambler, it's a great bike, but there's some things I notice about it where when I ride her bike, I'm like, this is what it should be. You know, there's these little sounds and stuff, little things, just tiny things, you know, nitpicks. Because that's what we do, right? We nitpick our stuff. No bike is perfect. Every bike has its quirks. And honestly, I haven't found any quirks in the Street Twin. That's saying something, you know? Like, the only thing that I don't like about the Street Twin or my Triumph is Euro 5. The Euro 5 has really butchered that engine to a point of it just running so hot. I left work the other day, and 30 seconds after I got on my motorcycle, the radiator fan turned on. Now, the bike isn't even at operating temperature yet. Why is the radiator fan running? It's running so darn lean that it's getting hot right away. And that's just sad, you know, like I don't think I'm gonna buy new bikes anymore. Like, I'm really happy I got this 2018 because this is Euro 4, and you know, Euro 4 is still not great. I would love to go back to Euro 1, but that's like 2001, so I mean, that's a 20-year-old bike at this point. So yeah, that's my only real complaint. Like, these bikes, these new modern bikes are getting really, really lean. They're just coming out of the factory because of the way that government regulations are going, just basically running poorly, and that's a shame. There's some workarounds, but they're not cheap. Like, the heat, when you're out here, it's totally okay, but we live in the city, so we really get roasted when we're going 20 miles per hour from stop sign to stop sign. That's why I don't think a lot of other people complain about it. You know, we have a very unique perspective on this, and you know, that's kind of my problem, right? Like, I live in the city, I choose to ride a 1200cc bike to work and back. That's definitely my problem, but I just feel like, you know, when I ride the CV to work and back, I don't get hot on that bike. This is a 1000cc, so it's definitely something in the way that these engines are being turned out at the factory. And that's a shame, because I think Bonnevilles, historically, before they were water-cooled, were just amazing. Hell yeah, Honda Ruckus? That's awesome, man. I used to have a Honda Ruckus. And that was the dream right there. I mean, that guy's put like 5 to 10 grand into that Honda Ruckus. I don't know how much of it I caught on camera, but it was something. I mean, talk about just stretched out and custom everything. Thank you. We getting some love today.
Right, yeah, we are. Where do you see us, I wonder?
I don't know, probably just around here. We've been hanging out on the strip for an hour. So let's kind of just talk about some of the overall specs of this bike. I'm not going to go into super details, but I'll give you like the real world stuff. Rear suspension, twin shock, pretty awesome. It's classic. Some say that the twin shocks are not like the best, but I personally have no issues against them. Chain driven. It has a Nissan rear brake, which is not the strongest brake, but it's just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But it does have a Brembo front brake. The Brembo front brake is significantly more grabby, but it also squeaks. And that's like across the board. My Scrambler also did. It's kind of annoying. So just know that, like, if you buy a brand new Street Twin with the Brembo brakes, you're gonna have squeaky brakes from the factory. Nothing's wrong with your bike. It's just the way they make them, and it's kind of silly. But oh, hey, there's another Triumph. But yeah, it's just one of those things. So be warned. It's not a life or death situation. Your brakes will work just fine. It comes stock with a pretty nice sounding exhaust, twin silencers, as you can see. I think for a factory exhaust, it's brilliant. Like, most factory exhausts are just not that great. And I think that Triumph is one of those companies that really does a good job on their stock exhaust systems. They really tempt you to not change them. And so far we've had this bike for over a year and we haven't changed it. We've thought about it. I mean, I've thought about it. I don't think Jess really cares that much. I mean, being a newer motorcycle rider, she's not as concerned with things like sound. You know, she thinks it sounds great, and rightfully so, because it does really sound good. But that's something that, of course, I like to do. I changed the exhaust on this bike. The Scrambler had an aftermarket exhaust when I bought it used. So that's just one of those things that it's a personal choice. You know, it's purely subjective. But if I'll try not to make any noise right now, you can hear it. Her bike does sound pretty good. Even with the stock exhaust, you can hear some little pops and crackles. As you can see, the riding position is pretty neutral. She's sitting pretty straight up, and she stands at 5'3", and she's not very far from the ground. She can easily get both feet on the ground. Not a complete flat foot, but enough to be comfortable. The only thing that's given her trouble is reversing, you know, like backing up into a parking space. That was a little tricky, but she's gotten much better at it and has learned how to do it on her tippy toes, just like any other rider, because not everybody out here is going to be 6 foot tall. So yeah, what other specs could we talk about that actually matter in the real world application? Seat height, just over 30 inches. That's about as approachable as it gets in a standard bike. You're not getting a lower seat unless you're on a 100% a cruiser. There's not much else out there that comes with low seats. 30 inches is about as good as you could ask for. And the Street Twin does not have your classic bench seat like most of the Bonnevilles do. It has more of a step down seat. So the passenger seat is more elevated and the main seat is lower in the front, which is how they achieve that 30-inch pretty low seat height. My favorite thing about this bike, though, that transmission. That transmission matched up to that 900cc engine is why that bike is so good. She's literally in 3rd gear right now. I'm over here in 4th gear. You know, like, that's the difference between my bike and her bike. And even my Scrambler would be similar. Her bike can just sit in 3rd gear anywhere from 20 miles per hour up until 40, 45 and be fine with it. And when you're riding like this, it's really nice to just put your bike in 3rd gear and forget about it. And just take the turns and have fun. And like, sure, when you're going 45 miles per hour, you're using a little bit more gas, but the bike is happy. That's one thing I really, really love about her bike is that transmission matched to the powertrain. It's a really great gear ratio. So other than that, I don't really think any of the other specs are that important. It's pretty basic. It's got 2 rider modes, rain and road. It has a straight up analog speedometer, and it has a digital RPM gauge with some other information stuff like the basics, trip meters and stuff like that. It's a straightforward bike. It has halogen bulbs. Nothing is LED on this bike. You know, it's basic. Maybe that rear tail light, that might be LED, but the headlight is 100% a halogen light. I actually quite like it. This LED light on the CB I'm riding, I can't see very much at night. On her bike, I can see a lot better. And it seems counterintuitive. Like, most people, they're all about the LEDs. But in my experience between this bike and that bike, and even my Scrambler versus her bike, the LED is not as good. And that could just be my experience, but that's what this review is about. Our experience with the Street Twin versus the other bikes we have, and why we just love the Street Twin so much. It's an everyday rideable bike. I love taking it to work. It can go on tours. We rode it 180 miles in one day up into the mountains, and it did great. The only thing that I would have to say is when we were going down the freeway for an extended period of time, her front end is just really, really soft. That front fork, it's just sprung super light. And when we're taking corners at high speeds and you hit a bump or something, she was a little concerned. She was like, hey, my front tire, it might be a little flat, you know, like, can we stop and check it? And we stopped and I checked and it was good. And I'm like, what were you experiencing? And she's like, well, it just felt really wobbly when I was kind of taking corners on the freeway. And I'm like, oh, that's actually your forks. Your forks are just really soft. So when you hit a corner and you're leaned over, it gets a little wiggly on you. So that's something, you know, to be noted. I think we're actually going to put some thicker fork oil in here and see if we can't adjust that a little bit. And if we really need to at the end of the day, we could respring it, put something in a little bit more firm, and that would fix it. But honestly, when I'm in the city, I really like how soft it is. It's the only bike that doesn't hurt when I go over cobblestone. So it's always a trade-off, you know? Like, they call it a street twin. So I'm taking that real literal. Like, this bike is made for riding around on city streets. And honestly, if that was the application Triumph was going for, they nailed it. Because it truly is a great little city bike. It's predictable, it's plush, it has a really comfy seat, and overall it just looks the part. Like, you can pull up to a cafe on this and nobody's gonna laugh at you. Especially if you're a girl, like, you're a badass. Jess knows it. She's a badass. So I'll leave you guys on that note. I hope you took a little something away from this. I wish my Cardo didn't die so that I could have got Jess to give you her 2 cents. But she's a little shy anyway about the YouTube thing. So, you know, it's kind of my channel. I just really love to include her because, you know, she's my person. And we share a really awesome hobby together. And I think that other people really could, you know, they can get excited about the stuff that we get to experience. So it would have been fun to get her perspective. But at the end of the day, our 1-year review of the Street Twin, it's a 5-star motorcycle. Sure, there's some little things we could improve upon, but overall I think that my other bikes could improve upon more than what we would want to improve on that bike. And that's, at the end of the day, all you can ask for. It's a solid package, and if you're looking for something in that medium, middleweight kind of ground, and you have $10K to spend, because it isn't the cheapest, it's a great option. Like, if you can't afford it, get yourself something that's from Japan and that's used and that's reliable and that you can pick up for $5,000. But if you have a $10,000 budget and you're in this kind of market, I do not think you'll be disappointed. What? I know, we were zooming. It's kind of fun. So yeah, that's our Street Twin 1-year review. It's a sick bike. I highly recommend it.